So, very good morning, all of you. And we are here today for the fifth session of this course on understanding and exploring epidemiology. And for the fifth session, we have with us our speaker for the day, Dr. Pradeep Aute. And we are very happy to have Dr. Aute here. He is presently working as a state surveillance officer of Integrated Disease Surveillance Project, Maharashtra. Dr. Aute is an MBBS and DCH from Dr. Vaishampayan Memorial Medical College, Solapur, Maharashtra. He also has an MA in English from Shivaji University, Kolhapur. He has a bachelor's in mass communication and journalism from Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada University, Aurangabad, and he has a gold medal for that. And his work experience includes he has joined Maharashtra State Health Services in 1993 and worked for 13 years in rural areas of Maharashtra as a medical officer. He is felicitated by state government for best rural health service as a medical officer in 1997. He has worked as a surveillance officer with National Polio Surveillance Project, a joint venture of WHO and Government of India from 2006 to 9 in Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, and Gujarat. He has headed the state control room during H1N1 pandemic, and he has participated in public health emergency management in Asia Pacific workshop as a representative of India in Hanoi, Vietnam. Uh, he has many publications on his name. Some of them include, publications in very renowned journals like Biomed Central, Public Health Journal, then Journal of Infection, Journal of Epidemiology and Global Health. He has written several books. Some of them include uh, Kaladarshi and Majha Abhalachi Ghost. So we are very happy and honored to have you here, sir, for the session today. And over to you.
Thank you for the very kind introduction. I think I will start sharing my screen for today's topic.
We can see the screen.
Yeah, I think screen is visible. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
yeah. So welcome to all the participants all across the states of India. We are actually exploring the epidemiology, and this is the perfect time to actually look into epidemiology, look into our surveillance system, because we are going through the historical COVID-19 pandemic since last 15 to 16 months. So this is the right time, the perfect time to introspect public health surveillance and epidemiology. So the scheme of my presentation will be basically, I will try to define what is surveillance and epidemiology. And as such, I will not go much into academics, but I will put face to face the field experience, the various systems we people are using in India with a special focus Maharashtra for public health surveillance in epidemiology. Then we will also think about the saline features of surveillance, the purpose and objective of surveillance. Then there are different types of surveillance. What are they? So we will also discuss about that. And after that, we will go through the public health surveillance system in Maharashtra and entire India, the history and development of this disease surveillance system in India, with special focus to Maharashtra. So in short, this is the scheme of my presentation. So to begin with, I think this is the very important dictum that what gets measured gets done, and this is the basis behind public health surveillance. The another way to put it, basically, once you measure your problem accurately, the problem is half solved. It is always said. So that is why the exact measurement of your problem, any problem, do it health status related or the epidemic diseases related. So whenever you measure your problem accurately, it helps you in a longer run to resolve it very amicably. So with that, I begin with to define this public health surveillance system. I think, as we all know, basically there are two words we are using in the topic itself. One is epidemiology and another is surveillance. And we know that by definition, epidemiology is epidemos, means among the people. We are actually studying a particular community with related to different health related issues. So it is a systematic, scientific and data driven study of the distribution, determinants, and of these health related states and events in a specified population. So this is in short what is epidemiology. When you look at these two definitions of epidemiology and surveillance, we found many similarities in that, and then we come to notice that basically surveillance is the soul of epidemiology. It is the vital tool to serve the purpose of epidemiology, because surveillance is an ongoing systematic collection, collation, analysis, and interpretation of data, and most importantly, dissemination of information to those who need to know in order that action should be taken. So any surveillance mechanism actually culminate into a proper public health action, and that is the sole purpose of surveillance. So it explains how important and vital role surveillance is playing in epidemiology. Now, what quality any surveillance system or any surveillance mechanism should have? It should be simple. That means it should be user friendly. It should be timely. That is quite important. Timeliness and completeness is uh, the qualities of any surveillance system. It should be repetitive. It should be flexible, because different epidemic diseases are coming and going. The population dynamics is also changing a lot, and at that time, flexibility of your surveillance system is very much essential. It should be sensitive, because as you know, just 3 days back, we have diagnosed the first Zika case in Maharashtra. So that kind of sensitivity any surveillance system need to have to diagnose any uh, case which is not previously found in that particular community. So that kind of sensitivity should be there in the surveillance system. It should have the strong predictive value, and it should be acceptable to the public and healthcare providers. And the most important, it should be cost effective. And especially in a country like India, which is a developing country, this cost effectiveness of the surveillance system is most important. There are 3 R's which actually are quite important, and they decides the quality of your surveillance system. And these 3 R, the first is reporting. Any surveillance system should have a timeliness and completeness of reporting. There should be certain time frame of reporting, and most probably, as of today, we actually looking for the real time data. So whenever whatever is happening in the field, we actually accept, or we actually expect that such things should be reported to the authorities at that particular time only. So we are trying to reduce this time gap between the happening of a health related event and actually reporting. So timeliness is important. And another thing is completeness. All concerned people, all stakeholders should be part of this reporting network, and they should report. Because the incomplete reporting will not give you the clear picture, the complete picture of your problem. And that is why it is necessary, the completeness of the report. So that is one important R of the surveillance. Second R is, as we all know, we are going through the COVID-19, that is recognition. Recognition means that particular surveillance system need to have the quality of diagnosis, the laboratory network is the backbone of any surveillance system. Because as we all know, there are fever cases, but what kind of fever it is? Whether it is a dengue, chikungunya, enteric fever, Zika, COVID-19, H1N1. So n number of cases or n number of diseases will actually present to you as a fever case. But your system should be having the quality of diagnosis. Your lab should be well equipped to recognize the condition, because with that recognition, the third R is changing, that is response. Because response is basically you know when what kind of disease you are facing with. When it is COVID-19, your modus operandi is different. When it is dengue, your modus operandi is different. That is why the recognition is actually plays the pivotal role in this surveillance system, and these three R's constitutes the qualitative surveillance mechanism: reporting, recognition, and response, which requires analysis and feedback. So these three are quite important in surveillance system. Then what are the key role of surveillance? Basically, as we know, in disease prevention control of disease, we have different programs like malaria control program, vector-borne disease control program, waterborne disease control program. So even vaccine preventable diseases program. So for that, we need to require some of the indicators, some of the measures of this disease activities, and that is disease frequency, disease distribution, and disease determinants. All these things can be analyzed through the surveillance mechanism. And so these are the key role of surveillance for any disease you are implementing it. Now we will go towards the importance of surveillance. Since beginning, I'm actually trying to emphasize that surveillance is the soul of epidemiology. Basically, surveillance helps you to assess the health status, because all the data collected through surveillance system is nothing but the reflection of health of the people. It keeps the record of existing health problems. It also helps in the interpretation of the mortality and morbidity status of that particular community. That is why at any given point, when you want to assess the health status of any community, surveillance is the key. So that is one part of the one important aspect of the surveillance. Second thing is also detect, or this surveillance also help you to detect the change in the disease and health practices. Because as we know now, there is entry of Zika in Maharashtra, Zika in Kerala. So whatever disease trend we are observing, that is the surveillance is only way to know that. Even regarding chikungunya, you can say in 2005-06, when we reported million of cases of chikungunya in the entire country, the chikungunya was more or less a rural phenomenon. But now, year, observing that even the urban localities are showing the cases of chikungunya. So this can be comprehensible through your proper surveillance mechanism. So it continues to recording of data, notifies about the disease strain, it keeps the track of the disease, and surveillance is also helpful for finding the natural history of the disease. So this is the second aspect of surveillance. Now, collection of data is not only for data purpose, it is not only for the figures. Basically, data is for planning, monitoring, and evaluation. Because surveillance, the data required for planning, monitoring, evaluation is provided by the surveillance. It is the base for evidence-based policy information. As you know, now we do have few lakh of cases of COVID-19, but when we analyze them, and we actually come to know that majority of the cases are from the age group of 60 plus, or basically the deaths, the mortality, the complications of COVID-19 are more as compared to the other age group than 60 plus population, or the population having some kind of comorbid conditions. It gives you evidence to go for the vaccination in the high risk groups. That is why we have done the prioritize the vaccination. We first immunize or vaccinated our senior citizens, followed by the people having some comorbid conditions. So surveillance actually provided this base for the policy. So that is one important aspect of the surveillance, because it helps the program developer in priority setting, also helps in assessing the effectiveness of the interventions. Whatever interventions we are doing, whether they are really helpful or not, that can be assessed to surveillance only. It also gives the early warning and detection of outbreaks. Surveillance notifies about the disease. All the data helps in detecting the outbreaks, and hence it helps in preparedness. Especially, this is true about the vector-borne diseases, because when we do a special kind of surveillance in vector-borne disease, which is called as entomological surveillance. In this, actually, we go for the surveillance of mosquito density. We go for the or we look for the larval density of particular mosquito. And so, prior to the outbreak, prior to the actual clinical cases, we come to know that when the house index in a particular area is more than 10, there is likelihood that this particular area may suffer from dengue, chikungunya, or Zika outbreak, like that, because you have the Aedes aegypti larval indices more than whatever they should be. So such kind of surveillance actually gives you a lot of time to actually avoid that kind of happening. So you can avoid the future outbreak with the help of this kind of entomological surveillance. So that is very important and practical approach, an aspect of the surveillance. So it also helps us to estimate the size of the health problem, detect epidemics, define a problem, and to facilitate the emergency planning. So these are some of the important aspects of the surveillance. Now, I think this slide again repeats many points that we already discussed regarding the purpose and objectives of the surveillance. This flow diagram actually explains how the any health event happen, and after that the public health investigation and data collection analysis actually lead you to the public health action. So it can also help you to evaluate the control measures. So whatever we discussed in earlier slide, it is basically repetition of many of the points in this slide. So I will just go ahead to the next slide. So now, what are the types of surveillance? And that is quite important to know it. First is active surveillance. Now, what is active surveillance? Here, actually, we are doing, as the name implies, we are doing something actively for finding the cases. So, like in Indian scenario, in the Indian context, we have actually the army of multi-purpose health workers, male and female, in our at our village level, and they have the fortnightly program. They actually go house to house for doing this kind of active surveillance of different epidemic-prone diseases, from malaria to diarrhea, from hepatitis to measles. So they actually go house to house. Whatever population is actually given to them, they cover that entire population in every fortnight. So this is a kind of active surveillance to find out the disease cases. So that is one. Second is passive surveillance. Here, you are not doing something actively, but the patient or the case is coming to your institution, in your primary health center, or in your community health hospital. So, like that, surveillance is done actually in a passive manner. So that is why it is called as the passive surveillance. Surveillance in which the data is already available, which is we are using, or the health, especially the HIMS, Health Management Information System of the government, is an example of the passive surveillance. And another important thing is sentinel surveillance. And sentinel surveillance is important, especially in a country like India, which actually caters the huge population, because you cannot do surveillance in the entire community at that time to know your problem exactly. We actually had the system of sentinel surveillance. we have used this during HIV/AIDS outbreaks, especially in post-1990 era. So it is a system where the specific catchment area is selected for the surveillance. And then whatever data we are getting from that particular catchment area is extrapolated for the entire population. And accordingly, the action plan are prepared, accordingly, the policies are designed. So sentinel surveillance is basically useful when your resources are very scanty. You are actually divide of some resources. So whatever resources, manpower and other things, whatever you have, in that way, you can go for sentinel surveillance to get the entire picture of your community as far as different epidemic diseases are concerned. So these three different types of surveillance are there. And as I have already said, we actually do some different surveys apart from this active, passive, and sentinel surveillance. As I already discussed about the entomological surveillance in vector-borne disease control program. So that is also another surveillance we are doing. So after understanding these different types of surveillance, we will just move ahead. And now this is the history. This is the history because now we want to learn in what way the present disease surveillance system of India and Maharashtra in particular has been developed. What are the historical backgrounds behind that? What are the thinking of the national level planners about that? And then we need to revisit the Surat city of 1994. As we all know, like, there were near about 693 cases and there were 56 deaths. But what happened, Surat is a quite important city of Gujarat, and more than 6 lakh people fled from Surat within 15 days. It is said that near about half of the Surat actually vacated within 2 to 3 weeks period due to the fear and scare among the populace regarding this epidemic of plague. And what it actually, what is the impact of this epidemic in Surat? Basically, what happened due to this fear among the population, and when half of the city is actually emptied within 2 to 3 weeks, what happened? Because just look at the economical aspect of the Surat. Surat is actually market of the diamonds. Almost 90% of the diamond of the entire world developed in Surat. So, and it is the month of September 1994. So September means it is just 1.5 months prior to Diwali. Diwali is the major festival of India, when the market is actually roaring in that during period. But what happened? Due to this epidemic of plague, and due to people are frightened, they are actually going towards their native places, the entire diamond business was actually washed out due to this pandemic, this outbreak of plague, and the economical loss at that time was near about 600 million US dollars. And then the national planners actually took very serious note of all this happening, because it is not only the human lives lost, it is the huge economic loss was there. And then the idea of national disease surveillance is conceived at the national level. And after this Surat, that is why I call it as Salam Surat, because it actually changed the Surat, the very face of Indian disease surveillance system. So after that, actually, National Health Policy 2002, they actually noted in their document that whatever disease surveillance system we have at present in India is actually quite extremely rudimentary level. The disease statistics are not flowing through an integrated network. Whatever information we are getting is quite delayed. And due to this belated information, it serves only the limited statistical purpose. It is not helping for the district level or state level planners to take appropriate action, that to timely action. So the absence of an efficient disease surveillance network is a major handicap in providing prompt and cost-effective healthcare system. That was the observation of National Health Policy 2002. So due to this policy envisaged to develop the integrated disease surveillance network across the country for the operational purposes. So this is one important development. Something good come out of the bad, that is the plague outbreak of Surat in 1994 actually pushed our planner to go for this kind of integrated disease surveillance network in India. And then as we already discussed, these were the weaknesses they noted, that is there is lack of integration with the private sector, the laboratory capacity is quite poor, and especially in Surat we observed that there are blind spots in urban areas, because urbanization in India is actually the quite a we can say at independence, India was basically a rural country. It was the bunch of villages. But post 1990, there is rapid urbanization. So urbanization is quite a late development in Indian demographic scenario. That is why our public health system in urban areas is not at par as that with the rural area. That is why there are blind spots in the urban areas. Then there is slow and inefficient sharing of surveillance information at the district level. There is limited capacity to undertake analysis and response at district level. And especially there is non-inclusion of the non-communicable diseases in this entire surveillance system. So these weaknesses were highlighted by national planners. And so immediate actions have been initiated. And now as this is very important quote from Narasimhan and others, that competent epidemiologists and surveillance staff members are not a luxury in developing countries. It is not a luxury. Actually, they are necessity for rational planning, implementation, and intervention. So basically, this plague outbreak or the plague epidemic of Surat was a kind of eye-opener for our country. And in 1997, actually, we started doing something as I will just go to the next slide and then again come backward. In 1997-98, actually, National Surveillance Program for Communicable Diseases, that is NSPCD program started. Here, NICD, now called as NCDC, was the nodal point for this program. And this program was started almost in 101 districts of the India. So immediately after 3 to 4 years of the Surat outbreak, this action was taken. And then, as I have said, in 2004, IDSP started functioning as a pilot in 9 states, including Maharashtra. To begin with, actually, World Bank was funding it. And afterwards, the program was continued during the 12th plan under the NHM. And now the central government is supporting this program in all the states of India. And now this is implemented by state, district, and communities. And Maharashtra, since beginning, that is in the phase 1 itself, was one of the high priority state while implementing the IDSP program. So this is in short how the integrated disease surveillance program was started in India and Maharashtra. So in this phase manner, phase 1, the 9 states are there, including Maharashtra. In phase 2, there are 14 states, 2005-06. And in next year, in phase 3, there were 12 states. So in that phase manner, the IDSP program was actually rolled down all across all the states in India. And now, what is the program? I think we should actually understand the rationale and the very objective behind IDSP. As the name itself implies, it is the integrated. So something is scattered, something is lying here and there, and that this program wants to integrate different things together. So as we know, first integration is basically public and private health sector. Private health sector is not at all the part of this disease surveillance system prior to IDS. So that is one thing. Second thing is, even in interdepartmental way, medical education department, the health services department. So different departments are working in different way. So integrate all these activities. And the most important, as we all discussed, is regarding the rural and urban. So even the data from rural and urban are not coming under one umbrella. So integration of all these activities, integration of all existing surveillance activities under one umbrella was first objective of the IDSP. And the second one, as you know, the second R of the surveillance is recognition. So you need to strengthen your laboratory surveillance. So laboratory services, so that is one important mandate of the IDSP, to develop laboratory network. So I think during COVID-19, most of you have observed that even in a state like Maharashtra, in January 2020, when we are yet to report the first case of COVID-19, there was only one lab which can process COVID-19 samples, and that was nonetheless the National Institute of Virology, NIV Pune. And now, as of today, we have near about 600 laboratories which can diagnose COVID-19. So that kind of expansion is possible due to even the network of the referral laboratories. We will discuss in details in next slides, but the laboratory component is one important component. So just go through it. First is the integration of all the existing surveillance activities. That is one. Second thing is strengthening of laboratories. And the third one is most important, because National Health Policy 2002 mentioned that data flow is quite slow because we are sharing data by traditional ways. The tar and telegraphs and letters were sent from the district to the state that we are facing such and such outbreak, and till they reach to the divisional or district state level, that outbreak is almost over, or may actually the fire actually engulf the entire forest. So you cannot take any timely action. So data flow was quite slower. That is why for the first time in India, this program actually tried and used information technology to facilitate the automatic transfer of information from village level to district level, from district to the divisional and state level, and from state to the national level. So facilitation of data flow regarding this epidemic surveillance or disease surveillance is one important aspect of IDS. And then strengthen inter-departmental coordination, capacity building of the local, regional, and national level disease control. Then again, improve clinical management of targeted diseases, facilitate participation of private sector, NGOs, medical colleges, community in surveillance. So all these objectives are there, but as I have said, three are most important. I will actually repeat again and again. One is integration of existing surveillance system, laboratory strengthening, and data flow with the help of modern IT technology. So these are three important aspects of the IDSP. Actually, nowadays, when we are in a COVID-19 era, I can say it is an era. Such kind of meetings, online meetings like Zoom meetings and video conferencing is now a daily routine for us. Nothing new in that. But to begin with, in 2004, actually IDSP is the first program which has brought this kind of video conferencing mechanism with the help of EduSat in the public health system. So IDSP started this kind of virtual meetings to begin with. So now we are quite used to such kind of meetings. And so this is basically the information flow in surveillance system. That means sub-centers, as you all know, that we have a sub-center, health sub-center for every 5,000 population. We have a primary health center for every 30,000 population. And for every block or for every 1 lakh population, we have a community health center hospital at every district level. So all these means under IDSP, we have established district surveillance unit at every district and then state surveillance level. So in this way, initially in 2004, start the districts, and that provided that connection to all the
सर आपला आवाज ब्रेक
So my screen is visible.
yes we can see the slide now.
Yeah. So sorry for the technical glitch in between. So this is in short the data flow under the IDSP program. We have IDSP web portal, idsp.nic.in, and actually the reporting frequency is weekly. Every district is actually uploading data, weekly data from Monday to Sunday on this portal. And this is actually the home page of this particular portal. Now, we should look into bit details about the different surveillance mechanisms or the data collection mechanisms this program is utilizing to collect data from all the levels. That means from village level to the district level. The first is syndromic surveillance. This program is using 3 types of different formats. One is syndromic S form. So this is basically designed for the paramedical personnel and members of the community. So all our multi-purpose health workers, male and female, they are using this syndromic surveillance format, that is S form, where disease nomenclature is not there, but the clinical pattern, syndromes are mentioned, like fever with rash, jaundice, loose motions without dehydration, loose motions with dehydration. I will show you the form also. So this is basically to gather information from the village level so that any medical officer analyzing this data can have the appropriate idea of what kind of disease activity is going on that in that particular village. So that is the S form. Second one is presumptive surveillance, that is P form, and this is designed for medical officers. They are working at primary health centers, community health centers, district hospitals. So whoever is attending OPD, the program has provided case definitions from from various diseases to the medical officer, so that there should be uniformity in reporting. And by history and clinical examination, applying his or her clinical acumen, the doctor working there is putting down the probable or the presumptive diagnosis on the paper. And here we are taking that presumptive diagnosis in this P form. So though that particular case is not the lab diagnosed case, but presumptive diagnosis is mentioned, so that kind of data is gathered through P form. And last one is the L form. As the name implies, L is basically for the laboratory. So this is for the medical officer and the laboratory staff. So whatever samples have been referred to the laboratories, are shared. This confirmed diagnosis, this clinical diagnosis is quite actually approved by the laboratory also. So in short, as we go from the syndromic surveillance to the L form surveillance or the laboratory surveillance, the quality of our surveillance goes improving and increasing, because it adds something, some value is added at every level. Because at syndromic level, the paramedical staff, paramedical personnel are using it. So naturally, they are not the medical people, they are not the medical doctors. But whatever capacity building has been done for them, that is helpful, and we are getting that data. Here at second level, though the diagnosis is presumptive level, but the medical doctor is giving that diagnosis. So it carries some weight more than the paramedical staff. So the quality is a step ahead. And then naturally the L form laboratory is diagnosed cases. So the quality is at par with the laboratory diagnosis. So in short, these three different types of surveillances we are using in IDSP. Now, this is in short is yes surveillance form. As I have said, this includes the fever less than 7 days, fever more than 7 days, cough, loose watery stool, jaundice, acute flaccid paralysis in less than 15 years of age. So these different conditions are reported from village level by the MPWs. And this is how the form looks actually. This is the format of yes form used under this IDSP program. Then, sorry, this is basically slide in Marathi, but I will explain you. This is what we are utilizing the services of ASHA in disease surveillance. As we know, in 2005, the flagship program of Government of India is NHM, National Health Mission. In this, actually, to facilitate the community ownership of the public health, this particular program NHM has envisaged this idea of ASHA, that is accredited social health activist. And this lady, which is actually having the secondary school education only, but she is from the local community. And in Maharashtra and in the entire country, actually, we have ASHA for every 1,000 population. So she covers only near about 200 households in that particular community. And that is why she knows what is happening in every household, because 200 household is not a big thing for this particular lady. And that is why we are actually taking help from ASHA also. And we have asked her to report anything happening which is not expected in that particular area, so that we can actually suspect the impending outbreak and utilize whatever information is shared by the ASHA in actually timely action. So even our reporter as far as the surveillance activity in the rural area is concerned. So this is P-surveillance form. As I have said, we are actually reporting some 18 plus different disease conditions in our IDSP format, like ADD, bacillus dysentery, from that to pneumonia, leptospirosis, dog bite, snake bite. So all these conditions are reported through the presumptive surveillance format. This is the format. So this is the P form, and this is filled by the medical officer and the pharmacy officer every Monday. So this is basically the weekly data of that particular primary health center or the community health center. And this is then laboratory surveillance form. It includes dengue, chikungunya, Japanese encephalitis, meningococcal meningitis, typhoid fever, diphtheria, cholera, Shigella dysentery, viral hepatitis A and E, leptospirosis, malaria, sputum for AFB, and others. So these are different diseases actually diagnosing with through the help of laboratories, and this is in short the laboratory format. Here actually, except malaria, whenever the laboratory diagnoses any other case, we ask them for the line list also. So the line list is provided by the lab that these many cases are actually diagnosed of this particular disease. So because for malaria, we have a different NVBDCP program, and we are getting all the line list and information from that. So just to avoid duplication, we are asking only the non-malarial positive cases for other diseases and their line list. Now, this one is one important aspect. As we all know, we are lacking the quality laboratory network in India, in Maharashtra. So IDSP actually developed a concept of referral laboratories. That means our medical college laboratories are quite equipped. They have the quality manpower in because the microbiologists are there. So these kind of laboratories can be attached to different districts, and these labs can provide their services during outbreak situation. So such kind of laboratory surveillance is actually developed in each and every state. If you see regarding Maharashtra, we have identified these 10 different medical colleges, and then we have actually attached different districts to that medical college. Now, actually, we increase this list of 10 to 12. So we have added GMC Yavatmal and GMC Kolhapur to this list. And every medical college microbiology lab is catering 2 to 3 districts, especially during the outbreak situation. So we actually want to improve the quality of our surveillance. So for that, actually, whatever epidemic prone diseases are there, these labs are well equipped to diagnose that. That is why we are taking help from the medical college laboratories for improving quality of our routine surveillance. Now, the same laboratories that this particular lab is showing, particular map is showing. And this is, in short, the organizational structure of the IDSP. As we have already discussed, we have a district surveillance unit at the district level. At state level, we have a state surveillance unit. And at the central level, there is CSU or the central surveillance unit. And at every district, we have a district surveillance officer, epidemiologist, data manager, and data entry operator. So these 4 people, they are working under the leadership of district health officer, and they are looking entirely towards the disease surveillance at that particular district. And at every district, look, because for proper disease surveillance, you require interdepartmental coordination. And that is why every district has this district surveillance committee. You just go through the list of these committee members. It involves all. Even the water and sanitation department is there. Even the school department is there. Medical colleges are there. Police is also part of that. Because for proper disease surveillance and the containment mechanism, you need to involve all the stakeholders in this activity. And that is why our district surveillance committee at every district is quite comprehensive. And through our data, whatever data we are actually gathering in a weekly manner, we are generating the EWS, that is the early warning signals for an outbreak. Whenever there is a clustering of cases or deaths, increase in cases or deaths, single case of disease of epidemic potential like JE or dengue, even the single case of dengue hemorrhagic fever is called as an outbreak. So acute febrile illness of unknown etiology, 2 or more linked cases of meningitis or measles, then unusual isolate, like in cholera. Sometimes we get some unusual isolate. So that is also a thing of concern. Then shifting in age distribution of cases, like in measles, due to high percentage of vaccination, we get measles in elder children, not less than 5 years, but we are getting in 10 years, 12 years. In diphtheria, we are getting in a higher age group. So this is shifting in age group of distribution of cases is also important aspect. Then I already discussed about the internal surveillance and regarding the vector density. That means the mosquito density. So that is there, and natural disasters. So these are different points or the information we are gathering from our all data, and that actually gives us some early warning signals regarding impending outbreaks. So we generate this EWS regularly. And apart from that, actually, we are also utilizing these 4 different information points to our surveillance. One is a rumor register, because anybody can call you and say that there are certain number of certain cases in particular village. So many times that information is false or fake, but still we keep a register at every PSC level, so that every rumor, every information received by the medical officer of the primary health center level should actually cross-check that information. So that is one thing. Then community informants, like teachers, like the village pradhans, they are reporting to you that my village is showing this type of cases and all those things. So these informants are also important. Then media. Many times media reaches everywhere. It is just like a sun and wind. That is why media reports something. So even the scanning of media is important to know whatever is happening in your area, in your jurisdiction. So, and as we have already discussed, the routine data review and the triggers can be generated through the data analysis. So these are the sources of information to detect outbreaks. And then in outbreak, whenever there is an outbreak, actually there is a different type of modalities we are using for outbreak. One is preliminary report by the nodal medical officer, then daily situation update, then interim report by the rapid response team, and after closure of the outbreak, the final report. So for every outbreak, that kind of documentation is necessary, because it gives lesson to contain and avoid future outbreaks. So basically, this is how we define the adequate response to an outbreak. Whenever there is an outbreak, we need to take the notice of this outbreak within 2 days, because any outbreak should be reported to the authorities, may at the district level or divisional level or state level within 2 days. So that timeliness is important. Then second thing is there should be lab confirmation of the outbreak, because so suppose there are fever cases, 10 fever cases, they should not remain as fever cases. You need to diagnose what kind of fever. And for that, there should be a referral of adequate human samples to labs testing within 4 days, because that only give you the quality diagnosis and the nature of the outbreak you are facing and the final outbreak investigation report. So these 3 things are quite important to call that this particular outbreak has been adequately responded by the system. So this is basically the indicators. This is a tool that how the particular district is responding to the outbreak. So these 10 questions are very important. Basically, as I have said, there is a rumor, media alert, but whether you have cross-checked it, is it an outbreak or not? If it is, why it is? If it is not, why it is not? So that is the thing. Then timeliness of reporting. That means within 2 days you need to report it, and at the same time there should be a response from the RRT. We have rapid response team at every district level and state level. That RRT should visit that particular point or particular village or the area where the outbreak is happening, and they should report, give their interim report to the authorities regarding how to control it, what kind of outbreak it is. Then laboratory confirmation of the outbreak, case definition, active case finding, there should be house-to-house surveillance, description of cases in time, place, and person, and then conclusion. Then specific public health intervention measures undertaken and recommendations and feedback given or not. So all these is it is a kind of a competency tool to deal with any outbreak, and that very simpler tool has been shared with all the districts so that they can go through all this 10-point agenda whenever there is any outbreak. So it actually improves your surveillance at the village level, at the district level. Now, what happened? Just look at it. This is the national level picture. We started IDSP program in 2005, and after that, if you go through the number of outbreaks that has been reported by the entire country, it actually raised to threefold. In 2008, the entire country was reporting near about only 500 outbreaks. But now we are reporting more than 2,000 outbreaks every year. And especially, just look at that yellow bar. The yellow bar is basically what is the percentage or what are the numbers of laboratory confirmed outbreaks. And it is increasing day by day. And now, especially, the figures are only up to 2015. But now in this year, this is near about 80 to 85%. That means out of 100 outbreaks, near about 85% outbreaks are actually lab confirmed. So laboratory support is now we are providing to each and every outbreak. So that is the improvement, the quantitative and qualitative improvement in the outbreak detection at the all India level that we are observing with the help of IDSP. So after that, after coming to that, what is ahead? What is our future plan? And as you know, you develop any kind of disease surveillance system. Perfection is just like a horizon. It appears to be nearer, but it is very difficult to catch it. So that is why you need to rectify your modes of functioning. You need to fine tune the things. You need to do mid course rectification in your system. So whatever you do, perfection is always elusive. That is why you need to go ahead and ahead. So equally after 2005, 2004-5, there is actually advent of IDSP program. In 2015, when the program has completed 1 decade of its operational practices, we actually done the entire analysis or the introspection of the entire program with the help of WHO teams. And this WHO teams actually they visited 6 to 7 different states, and actually they reviewed the entire modus operandi of the program. They reviewed the various procedures and practices of the program, and then they advised to go for the real-time data, because till date IDSP was collecting the weekly data. So for further improvement in the program, they advised to go for the real-time data. And then what happened, we actually, this is the new thing in IDSP, that is IHIP, Integrated Health Information Platform. In December 2019, Maharashtra has started this IHIP program or the platform for disease surveillance in our state. And different states, near about 7 to 8 states also started IHIP. So this is the new beginning for disease surveillance in Maharashtra. This is the home page of IHIP. And now what is IHIP? What is the value addition of IHIP? We need to understand. Look at this. This is basically the difference between the current IDSP portal, what we have just learned, and what is IHIP. In IDSP portal, we were capturing the aggregate data only. That is only quantity, only figures, numbers. But here we are capturing the disaggregate data of persons at all levels. Here is paper-based data collection were there. There was no linkage between data of ESP and L forms. There is weekly surveillance. In IDSP of the previous years, we were monitoring only 18 health conditions. And this particular IDSP portal was only for disease surveillance. There was no facility for geotagging, no facility for the auto alert. But in IHIP, as I have said, there is a data is disaggregate. We are using mobile and electronic devices for data collection and analysis. There is no paperwork. And there is linkage between the SPL and early warning signals. That means the platform gives the early warning signal to the concerned officers that there is an impending outbreak. The SMS will be delivered to that particular officer. It captures the real-time data or daily surveillance data. And we are now monitoring 33 plus health conditions, so almost double what we are actually doing surveillance for in previous IDSP version. So there is scope for data integration with the other health program. So on IHIP, other programs like tuberculosis, like RCH, like NVBDCP, all can come on this IHIP in a phased manner. So this IHIP platform is not only for IDSP, but it is for all health-related program. This is the GIS enabled. That is why the graphical representation of the data into integrated dashboard is possible. Advanced data modeling and analytical tools, and a facility for automatic generation of alert for suspected outbreak situation. So in short, this is the way ahead than whatever we are using till now. So this is really the big development, the milestone for the IDSP program. So this is again the same thing, whatever we discuss about the IHIP, it is mentioned in this slide. So this is in short, the progress of IDSP. To begin with, it was the manual reporting, then report through emails. Then we have developed the IDSP portal gate, and we are collecting data in a weekly manner. And now we are on the IHIP, that is the near real-time data. So we are going towards the perfection. We are not achieved it. We are far away from it. But daily, we are actually going ahead inch by inch. And that is our shooting towards the perfection in this surveillance. We are actually trying to achieve the functional vision of surveillance. And what is it? Basically, collect and transmit the data, analyze the data, feedback information, and make decisions. All levels use information to make decisions. So this is the functional vision of surveillance. And without this vision, surveillance is useless. And that is why we need to have this functional vision. There are two data hemisphere. One is data generation hemisphere, another is data use hemisphere. So we need to bridge these two hemispheres to make the world of epidemiology, enhance the world of our public health system. And that is why this bridging these two hemispheres is key to succeed. My this presentation regarding the importance of surveillance in epidemiology. Thank you very much. Thank you, SPPU, Dr. Aarti Nagarkar Madam, and her entire team for giving me the opportunity to have dialogue with all you people. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very informative and very, very enlightening session. We came to know about several things which we kept wondering whether it's really happening, but it came from you. So we now know how the system is working and the kind of people who are working behind the system. Sir, do you have time for a few questions? We have a couple of questions here. 2-3 questions, sir. So the first question is, you mentioned that there are 33 plus conditions we are monitoring. Does that include non-communicable disease? So we are not able to hear your voice. Sir, could you please unmute?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes, now we can.
Yeah. Yes, please.
So shall I repeat the question?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, the question is, you mentioned that there are 33 or more conditions have been monitored. Does that include non-communicable disease?
No, not yet, madam, not yet.
Okay, so we are talking only about infectious diseases, right?
Yeah.
Other question is, sir, how strong is the disease surveillance system in our country in view of COVID-19? And in connection to that, could you clarify the role of IDSP in COVID-19? So I know everybody is talking about COVID-19, but maybe people wanted to know the role of IDSP.
Yeah. If you look at the data being generated in COVID-19 on day-to-day basis in the entire country, the IDSP people working across the country, they are actually collecting this data. These are the people who are using the COVID-19 portal and the RT-PCR or the civil analytics portal. So entire IDSP staff is handling this data, and
Okay.
this is the mammoth data, I
Right.
must say, because if you compare the data size, the cases we are reporting on day-to-day basis
Hmm.
are more than the aggregate cases of 12 years of H1N1 pandemic.
Yes.
Whatever were reported in 12 years in H1N1, now we are reporting in a single day.
Day.
So that is the size of data. And that data size is actually handled by the IDSP itself. So
Okay.
everywhere our data manager, data entry operators, our epidemiologist, district surveillance officers. So these people are actually working regarding this data handling.
Okay. Okay. Sir, just one more question, and that is, how do you handle the challenge of private sector? Because in urban areas, mainly people go to private sector, and apart from TB and maybe now COVID, there is no compulsion as such for them to report data to IDSP. So how do you handle that challenge?
I must admit that it is very difficult to handle the challenge of private sector. We are trying to integrate their information to IDSP network or the surveillance network, but at times it is very difficult, and
Right.
we are not quite successful in actually, I may say, accommodate all the private sector in our surveillance network. We
Right.
are moving ahead and ahead,
Right.
definitely, especially in COVID-19. All private sector is reporting us daily. So that is one thing. But in pandemic situation, that happens. But
Right.
and on day-to-day basis, it is very difficult. And especially another way is some legal mandate or legal sanctioning. Like for dengue, we made dengue notifiable. So then it becomes necessary for every private practitioner to report dengue cases.
Right.
So this is the other way to involve them.
Okay. Okay. So there are few questions like which says, what are the criteria to select sites for sentinel surveillance? Maybe you can just give an example and
Yeah,
yeah.
especially, I will give you example of HIV/AIDS. At that time, it was not possible to test all the community or screen all the community. So what we have done, we have actually done that sentinel surveillance at the ANC, that is antenatal care unit. So that pregnant women are coming there. So we are testing them. Then we are testing the sex workers. Then we are testing the truck drivers. So we are and this is helping us to assess the magnitude of the problem. So in that way, actually, we decide the catch area for the sentinel surveillance, so which can be repeated over.
Okay. So, sir, the questions are endless, but I think we must put full stop somewhere. I understand that you are extremely busy and you have to rush to your regular work. So, I thank you on behalf of the Pune Knowledge Cluster and Pune University. I thank you once again for such a beautiful and wonderful lecture. It was very informative, and all participants have enjoyed your lecture. Thank you so much. So, we look forward to more interaction, maybe next course sometime. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Prachi, we can end the
Yes,
meeting now. If
yes, so we are keeping the meeting on for maybe 5 minutes more. People who have not filled the attendance, kindly fill it up. And I will, request all of you to please make sure that you fill the attendance every day, because the link is keep on looking at the chat box, because then based on that the certificates will be processed.
right, and some people have requested that they could not mark their attendance last time. So
Okay.
we will be doing it through their Zoom attendance, I believe.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prachi.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll take your leave now. Thank you.
Sure. I will also end the meeting in next 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. See you all on Friday. Hello. Prakshi here again. I spoke to Kimberly sir, and he said that that person can join on 5th, and maybe both of us, like I will also come to Ayupa on that day, and then we can have a discussion with him, both of us actually. So, what would be a good time for you to have a quick discussion? Fine, fine, 11:30, 5th of August, that is Thursday. Okay, maybe 10:30, 11. I will ask him. Yeah, we will come at your office at 11. Okay, thank you.